Hiya, this is Adrian Fielden. In this lecture, I'm going to continue talking about the design document. There's only a couple more sections to go through. I'm going to have a look at some flowcharts or wireframes that are used in the design process, and then some sample game design documents, which I'm going to attach the Moodle there. The next section is the story. If your game has one, again, more to a digital game than a board game, I would say. The first section is a synopsis of your story. You summarize it here in 1 or 2 paragraphs. After that, you detail the complete story. Do so in a way that mirrors the gameplay. Don't just tell the story, but structure it as it unfolds in the game. If there's a backstory, any important elements of your story that do not tie into the gameplay. Much of this might not actually make it into the game, but it might be good to have as a reference. Do you have any narrative devices? Describe the various ways which you plan to reveal the story and what devices you plan to use to tell the story. And finally, in this section, any subplots, because games are not linear like books and movies. There might be numerous smaller stories interwoven into the main story, and describe each of these subplots and how they tie into the game and the master plot. If your game involves the creation of a world, you need to go into detail on all aspects of that world. An overview, first of all, like the other sections, give an overview of it. Key locations, where can the player go? How do they get there? How do they travel? The mapping, scale of the world, what physical objects are in the world, the weather conditions, is it set in a snowy world, is it a desert, does it have day and night cycles, the physics of the world, and the society and culture which will tie into your story and the people who inhabit the world. Okay, the final section of the functional section of the game design document, again, it can be divided into 3 sections. Concept stage, functional stage, which we're on now, and then if you're doing a digital project, technical specification. So this is the final bit of the functional stage, which is a media list. This is a list of every media asset that you're going to need for your game. As I was saying before, if it's a board game, it could be the board, what does the board look like, what cards you're going to need, what's the money look like, what's the art style going to be, are there any avatars in it. For a digital game, it can be the interface assets, the user interface, buttons that you're going to need, icons you're going to use. They all have to follow the same art style, the color palette for these, the environments. If you're creating a 3D world, this is where you list everything that's going to be in that world, all the objects that you're going to need. The characters, all these need to be modeled. The animations, the music, and the sound effects. Just to give you an idea there, I rooted out one that I worked on the Power Rangers game there. I was doing animations on it. This is as extensive as it gets. So these were the animations that I worked on for this Power Rangers game. I think there was 8 characters I was doing animations for. And each one of these, see Ranger, Attack, Saber 1, single-handed over, shoulder slash. That was one animation I had to create. This big list was created as part of the design document before I started on it. As you can see, it is very, very extensive. These are all the animations for a little mobile game. That's everything we had to create. So yeah, as I say, it's quite involved. So this is a sample flowchart for a game. When I said plot out your whole gameplay using flowcharts and then create the design document from that. This is a sample of that. If you see, it's a bit blurry there. It's the only image you can find of this one. On the left-hand side, it has the launch page, and then it has a welcome the player, and then there are 2 options to choose yes to instructions or no to instructions. If you choose yes, they go to the instructions. If you choose no, you go to the welcome screen. And then they go to the game itself, and it gives you all the options that the player can have and every possible outcome of those options, all in a flowchart, going from one option to the next. So that will be a flowchart. This is what I mean when I say user interface wireframe. It's just a SketchUp of any of the menus, screens that the player will encounter during the game. This is then passed on to the art department, who will then create the actual screens. You'd also use a flowchart as well to show how these screens interact with each other. Like, for instance, if I click the main menu button, you'd have it on a flowchart, it goes to the main menu. Load story would go to the load screen. Begin would start a new game, etc. So we have all the different parts of the game design document covered there. The only one I haven't got into is scheduling. It's part of this design document, so I'll talk about it when we get there. I'm going to show you a couple of samples here. I've put in a lot on the Moodle folder there. There are quite a few sample documents and also some templates to help you through the process when you're creating your game design document. So here's one I just want to go through the elements of. It's called Hero's Journey. This is a board game design document. As I've said, maybe there's not as much to be put into a board game document as there would be to a digital game. A digital game, you'd have the technical document and probably more sections in your functional and your concept stage of the document as well. So as I said, here's Hero's Journey, board game, game design document. So I'll just run through it. The first stage he's got here is he puts revisions right at the front. This document is a living, breathing document that's going to change during the design process. As it is, if you make a major change, you just update it and put it in this section at the start. You see he's got like 1.3, key features added, scope and game elements updated. So you can keep track of where things have changed during the design process. Table of contents here, the first few there, game description, story, design goals, influences and sources, target market. There will be the concept part of the document where if you're taking this to get funding or a Kickstarter, this is the bit that potential investors will be looking at where you're trying to sell your game. It goes on to the key features there. That's where you go through all the gameplay, the core gameplay, the game flow. How does the player's turns go from start to end? You have the characters in here and elements of gameplay. The art bible, your concept sketches here for the artists, any animations, what art style it is. Level design, these will be where your flow charts come in and your wireframes to show how the level progresses throughout. And asset revelation schedule, all the assets you're going to need in the game. So moving on there, the game description, there's your one sentence synopsis of the game. So if they're investors in it, they can just have a quick look at that and then they know they're going to be interested in your game. Story, it's a bit light on story here. It gives you a bit of a story there of what the character will be doing, the player will be doing. Influences and sources, this is where you list all the similar games to your game. Even investors look at this and they see Game of Life's one of the influences. That's sold millions of copies, so that might get their interest there. Some nice pictures of Game of Life. Here's a good bit to add. Pros and cons of Game of Life. Gear it towards how your game is going to be unique from that game. How does your game differ? And how is your game better? Here you'll see he's got the cons. Stories for too young an audience. The board is sometimes quick to finish. Gameplay too single-minded. Unbalanced between life tokens and salary. This is obviously because his game that he's making is for a more mature audience. So he's put it's a negative that Game of Life is not for that mature audience. So that makes his game, unique and better for his target market. Second game is compared with Lord of the Rings. Obviously that'd be a big seller. He's focused in on the game cards that Lord of the Rings uses because he uses similar game cards to this. It's a selling point. Again, he's got the pros and cons. Hard to tell when one player's won, kind of difficult to understand and complicated rules. So I'd say what he's saying is that there's a lot simpler rules and it's a lot easier to pick up. Another one there that uses these cards will be similar elements to what he's using in his game. Cons of this one, again, he's put complicated rules. So obviously his has the simple rules in it. This one, Munchkin, this guy, Steve Jackson, was one of the big names in non-digital games. He did the set of books like Warlock and Firetop Mountain and a few others with a guy called Ian Livingstone, who went on to start the company that made the Tomb Raider game series. So if you compare it to one of his games, he'd be well known in the industry. Target market, very important to put that in. Age 10 to 16, enjoy casual board games like fantasy theme. The next stage he's got there is his core gameplay. He's going through how a player would play a turn and how the game would progress from start to finish. His game flow here could even, it's a good thing about board games is the game flow is really, that could be the rules. You could just have that as the rules and there's your mechanics in the game. So he's gone through all that. Describing the characters and avatars that are in the game. There's some other cards he's got there that he's gone into detail with. Here's where he's using a wireframe. This will be, if this was a digital game, this would be the user interface element. Just a mock-up of the cards that are involved in the game and the information that's going to be found on them. What pieces are in the game. He's got another element here called the attack wheel, which is used separately. He's gone into detail on that. Then he goes on to his art assets. He sets the art style there. Overall art style to be 2D with a fairly medium cartoon style. Low saturated colours for the cards, high contrast for the symbols. He's chosen a font there called Carbon Type, and he's given an example of it. And then he's given a list of all the assets which need to be created, the art assets which need to be created for the game. Then he discusses the board, how the board works. He's got a lovely example of the board, a mock-up of his actual board there. Some more concept art here that's going to be used in the game. More concept art of the cards. Level design diagram. You can take different paths, obviously, looking at this, depending on how you play and how you complete the game, what the goal is to finish the game. Here's a flowchart to show how the game works. This is what I mean when I talk about the flowcharts. You start there, you train to be a hero, you work as a mercenary, you slay an ogre, then you go on this similar path, and you have options. You can save a village from bandits, you can search for lost treasure, and you follow this through, and obviously there'll be different paths and different things happen depending on which choices you're making it. A bit more about the game mechanic. Our game mechanic functions in such a way that every time one player plays the game, will have a different outcome. So a bit more about the mechanics in this game. A bit more about treasures and power-up cards. Have a look. A production schedule. I didn't talk about this. This is where you plot out how long the game's going to take you, and you have milestones and goals that you achieve along the way. On such a day, after 3 weeks, we will be at this stage, we'll hit this milestone, we'll hit this milestone. Investors will be looking for that. They're looking for you to be hitting these milestones. So he's put how many hours it's going to take as well, which is a work of an educated guess in most cases, from my experience. But these are, if you're working in a game design workflow, the project manager will hold you to these. They'll ask you for these at the start. How long is it going to take to do this? And they will hold you to that, because the next person along the line in the workflow will be waiting on you to finish, and they'll have an exact time. It's going to take him, the first one there says 44 hours. So they'll have plotted that he starts work on this game after 44 hours, and he'll be looking for you to have done this. It's very strict in the game industry. There's a lot of, if you're not hitting those, you'll be doing a lot of 15 to 20 hour days to do it. And there you go, there's his production schedule. So let's look at game design document for a board game. That's a really good one, I think. It's got pretty much everything. It's quite thorough. It's a bit light on the story there. It's 35 pages, everything in there that you need.